Okay, you may proceed.
All right, it is 5:01. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Second.
Okay, our first order of business is approval of minutes from the February meeting. You guys got a chance to review those?
Yes.
Right.
Once a month for the last 5 and 6 months.
7 months now.
Really on it.
My own motion to,
They'll make a motion to accept the minutes as read or as given.
Second that.
all right. Minutes are approved.
Very good. You can just give me the bottom one.
Okay.
Thank you. Before you approved them, yes?
Yes,
Did we have anybody sign up for public comment?
You just have the one that I included in your packet
Okay.
from Matthew Midget.
Is it,
It's a thank
is
you.
it just right there within
Yes,
the
sir.
minutes? Okay.
That's funny on behalf of the horses and myself. So it's good to start with some positive feedback.
We didn't have anyone submit a request to participate in the meeting through Zoom.
Okay.
Huh? Oh, okay.
All right, I guess next we have update on the recreation master plans.
So the current plan that we have in progress is the Grindstone Lake Master Plan. And as with lots of other things, there was a halt put to the public interaction part of the master plan. They did come out and they evaluated the current conditions. They did evaluate some of the activity over the summer. But one of the important aspects of it was to include several opportunities for public participation. And since that couldn't happen, they're looking at a series of virtual public meetings. During those public meetings, they're proposing to have a story map link available on the village website, and then people can actually open that up and click on certain things and comment on certain parts of the map, whether it's they want activities or they want nothing here, or I believe I've included that story map link in your email notification for the meeting. You all can look at that if you have a chance.
Yeah, I looked at,
So we have this, I included this notification of the first public meeting, which will be on November 12th. They will, again, people have the opportunity to zoom into that and make comments. They can comment on that storyboard as well. And then I believe they're gonna try to have 2 meetings after that and incorporate comments and feedback from the community into that master plan. The original completion date for the Grindstone Master Plan was December, but we're talking about issuing a task order to the governing body to allow an extension up to February. It's important that we have the plan completed by February because we're anticipating some recommendation for projects to come out of that plan.
Okay.
And so we wanted to coincide with the budget process for the village, so we can request funding, for those projects.
Okay, and obviously that's already been shared on, I saw it on Facebook and all that type of stuff too, to notify the public and
Yes, and
get everyone involved.
Yes, there'll be some additional, posts as well. I believe you probably saw it on our page today. I sent it out. And then, the public information officer for the village is also gonna share it, through her contacts, through the village's page. And we have a list of local emails that we'll email out that information to as well.
I know I shared it with my followers also, so.
I don't have any followers.
So we will be having 3 meetings between November and January.
Yes. I believe there's at least 2 in the month of November. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I don't have the dates for the other.
And those will be physical meetings for us?
No, they will not be for us.
Okay.
It'll just be these public interaction meetings for the master plan. Typically, and I believe it's in the bylaws, if I'm not mistaken, the Parks Commission typically does not meet for the month of November, December, or January. However, since we just started meeting, and if you all want to have a meeting, then we can schedule a special meeting. You
I
all let
believe
me
it's
know.
just November and December.
Is it just
Yeah.
November?
Yes, because it falls on the holidays, it falls right at the holidays.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a different board that's not January.
But again, if you all wish to have a meeting during those months, since we haven't been meeting, there's probably, it's your call. You just let me know and we can schedule a special meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Do y'all have any questions, additional questions regarding the master plan?
No, who's facilitating these meetings?
The meetings are facilitated by the planner, which is Groundwork Studios. They were
Link
awarded
removed.
an RFP for master plan services for the village. We had a list of several different master plans that we ultimately wanted to perform. I had plans earlier or in October to request funds for a Wingfield Park master plan from the Lodgers Tax Board. I believe it was with the weather though, that meeting was canceled. And so they have an upcoming meeting, a reschedule on November 16th. And so I'll be requesting the funding to perform the Wingfield Park master plan.
Okay.
And in anticipation of that plan, the Parks Department went around to properties on the perimeter of the park. And we went door to door. We either hung a door hanger with some information about that master plan process, or we spoke with the individuals who were home. The important aspect of, or potentially could happen with the Wingfield Park master plan is that it could potentially close Center Street from Wingfield up to Spring. And so we wanted to, let them know at the onset instead of being surprised later on down the road. And so a lot of the people that we spoke with were open to that idea. All of them pretty much did voice some concerns about what it would do to the traffic.
Sure.
Because, closing that road. And so,
And
I
EMS
shared with them.
services already looked at that, and
I'm sorry?
EMS services already looked at that. and-
No, it's gonna be part of the planning
Okay,
process.
all right.
And so, again, that'll be important for us to stress that to the planner if they're awarded the job, that's an important aspect of the process, that if that's to be closed, we need to evaluate what it would do to the traffic in that neighborhood.
And so where Center Street was though, that all turns into green space then, technically usable area right there. You guys obtained that white building right now that's part of the water department. and as well as the old courthouse. I
Right.
believe. Okay.
So I'm not sure if y'all recall, but during the comprehensive plan process, there was a conceptual plan that came out of that process. And it did the very thing you just said. It
Yeah.
included the removal of that road with an expansion of the park. They would be removing the old, or the courthouse, old police station building, possibly expand that into parking or a staging area, a stage
Yes.
for
Yeah.
concerts. But essentially it would just create a larger park out of the majority of that village-owned property in that area.
Cool.
And that's one of the things that that some of the homeowners did say is they would support that because they felt it would give the neighborhood a cleaner, better looking.
I mean, I agree. The more usable green space that we can have in town, the better,
They
at least in
were,
my opinion.
they were looking forward to all of that equipment from the water department being cleaned out, cleaned up.
Yeah.
So-
Aesthetically.
Again, I'll be requesting the funding from lodgers tax on November 16th, and then after that, I would have to go back to the governing body and ask them to task Groundwork Studios with that project if it was approved.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on the master plans?
I don't think I have any more about Wingfield. Anyway. And then obviously we're still working on the Grindstone master plan, obviously with all the public input and forum. I think I'm okay.
Good.
I'm good.
Yep.
I'm good.
Is it, yeah, so the dates are pushing on that. That's why I was just.
Yeah. So we would be drafting master plan here.
Right. So moving on to Ruidoso Snow Play and Ice Skating Expansion Agreement. What is, can you tell me what the current status is? Did the village council approve this or already? Is that-
No.
Okay,
So I'm gonna explain the expansion and then I'll go get into the details of the process. So, Mr. Dorgan is proposing to expand the Ruidoso Winter Park to include a beginner ski area, a snowboard park, obviously lifts up to that area, as well as a mountain coaster, summer tubing, and the addition of zip lines, which would create a year-round attraction. Let's see, part of that, the expansion of his winter operations would require additional parking. And so part of that agreement would include allowing him to park on A field. So he has already had the approval to park on B field. We kind of did it on initially as an interim basis. We didn't know how parking would affect the field. So he's parked on the field for several years now.
is this west to east? A field is on the west
Highway
side.
48,
Yep.
Ski Run Road,
Yeah.
entrance into the parking lot. This is A,
Yeah.
B, and C.
There was reference made to a addendum A. I didn't see that in here.
Okay, so I believe that, okay, so first back to,
Okay,
a B field is right in the middle,
Okay,
is the
got it.
middle field. We've already have approval for that. We would allow him also to park on A. To answer your question on an addendum, I believe that was probably language that was from the previous lease, and so that would actually need to be struck out of the agreement if it is still. in
Well, it referenced a map that I wanted to look at, but did not see. How long has they've been parking in B field?
I think like, this would be like the fourth year.
Oh, really? And has that just been used as overflow park, like when they
Yes.
just, so this wasn't regularly done where, I mean, how many days a year were they actually parking on B field? Do you know?
I don't know specifically.
Because I know
believe
I've been there and I've never parked
Right.
on the field.
I
so.
believe it was on his weekends is when he had his larger groups.
And was there any damage done to the fields in the,
No, there
During
wasn't
that
any
time.
damage, and part of the arrangement with him is that he pays a turf company to come in prior to we open in the spring. They come and
Is it-
aerate and they seed it.
okay, so if there is any damage during
Yes,
the
it's
parking
corrected.
process, it's corrected prior to the season starting, the softball
Yes.
season? Okay.
So, part of the process for permitting a lease is to pass an ordinance that has the specifics in the ordinance that permit that. And so what the village, the governing body did was they passed a lease that included the terms, the payment, and the area that are potentially included in that lease. So after that lease, or after that ordinance takes, or I guess it has so many days before it becomes law, the ordinance, the second step would be approval of an agreement. And so, to answer your question from earlier, Trevor, they just approved the ordinance that.
That's what I
permits
didn't
them to do
understand.
that.
I knew that they had approved something, but so I wasn't sure what our recommendation.
So the
Roll here
second
was-
part of that process is to finalize an agreement with Mr. Dorgan. As you all may have heard, there was a lot of concern and public comment and participation during that ordinance public hearing. And one of the questions that came up is to me specifically as a parks director was, had that ordinance been reviewed by the Parks Commission? And obviously it wasn't. And so because this is a timely issue, ultimately we would like, if this was approved, to be open next year. And so, giving them 12 months it would be cutting it close. But so they decided to go ahead and approve the ordinance only on the case that the Parks Commission would be allowed to review the agreement. And so that's why we're here today.
And this is the lease agreement that we're reviewing that's here in front of us?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if I may, you all had the agreement over the weekend to review.
Mhm.
I would like to touch on some of the aspects that I believe that are really important and that provide a huge benefit to the village. So this lease agreement, ultimately, his previous lease agreement, the original was signed in 1997. And since the signing of that agreement, he had 5 addendums to the agreement. The village had 5 addendums to that original agreement. And so what the hope was to clean it up and to start over with a brand new lease agreement. And so this is a draft of that agreement. Again, there might have been some language referencing an old map that was tied to the original. I'll review that. But so some of the important aspects of the lease is we performed an appraisal of the additional property that he would lease. It's an additional 80 acres, but it's just raw land with no infrastructure. It's the side of the mountain, and that's the property from basically the boundary of the ball fields and the concession building south up the mountain.
To the top of that ridge up
Yes, to
there?
the top.
It doesn't move west at all.
It does. It's on west it goes about abuts up to the RV park, and on the east boundary is behind the condos.
Oh, High Country Lodge?
High Country
High
Lodge.
Country Lodge?
On
Okay.
the east.
So
Yeah.
that lease would expand to the back of High Country Lodge and then all the way over to Eagle Creek RV Park.
Yes.
The, that, there's a new road kind of cut in there in the storage building. Who's that warehouse belong to? I mean, is that their warehouse? It sits,
So it was constructed by Redoso Snowplay. And there's a new road that was cut into the hillside to perform forest thinning. There's 3 large forest thinning projects that need to happen there within the next year. So again, some of the important parts of the updated lease was the current lease payment. Again, we had an appraisal done by New Mexico Appraisal Company. The additional leasing of those 80 acres came out to be, I believe, roughly about $65,000. His current lease at the last CPI increase was roughly about $100,000. And so when you add the two, the total of the new lease would be, I believe, $166,418.
Okay.
And that would be paid on an annual basis in the current fiscal year, which for us would be before July 1 of each year.
I want to say that, I want you to say that again.
Okay, so
It's
that
$166,000 annual payment,
Annual payment.
not over the span of the first 15 years. That's every year, that's an annual payment.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure that I read that right.
So
Another-
every year that place is in operation.
Another important aspect of the lease would include the terms. In this new lease agreement, it would include a 50-year term. So our Redoso Snowplay currently had 22 years remaining on their original, or their lease,
Pre-existing
their
lease.
current lease. We had added the village had added some years a few years back, but currently they had 22 years remaining. And so this would be an additional 28 years on top. So it would be a total of 50 years. On top of the flat rate payment, the first 15 years would include 10% of gross of the year-round operations. And just to clarify, the year-round operations does not include the winter tubing, the beginner ski lesson area, or the snowboard park. So that leaves the mountain coaster, the zip lines, and the summer tubing. And just for like rough comparison or for reference, we evaluated purchasing a mountain coaster on behalf of the village and operating one. You can generate $1 to $1.5 million annually. So if we can get an additional 10% of that, so you're looking, another $100,000 on top of a flat payment of $166,000. So
can
yes,
I ask a question? One of the things that was I guess our primary role is to determine the impacts to the fields, and
Yeah.
that's because that's the only thing we have any jurisdiction over. One of the things that was of concern to me is that there's a schedule given here for winter months and summer months, which I'm assuming are the seasons. They're being
Yes.
referred. And just below that, it says RSPIS may be used Ruidoso's real property that is commonly known as Field A and Field B for parking during the season of operation, which to me, that means like permanently.
so there's
The way I'm reading that,
Right.
that's why,
So there is a definition of the season of operation, and where that came from was from the original lease. Originally, his season of operation is essentially the winter. And so it's roughly from like November through Easter. That's roughly his season of operation. Outside that season of operation, we wouldn't permit him to park on A or B field.
okay, I don't think that's delineated or well-defined within this agreement, especially considering that the winter months are considered Labor Day to Memorial Day, and the summer months are Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Right.
I can work on cleaning that up. So,
Just to find it.
Because it just, because the way I read that is I no longer
Yeah.
see when we have access to the fields.
so,
And I mean, which is,
Right.
that's a whole nother, question if we're giving up those fields, then.
so the intention is to not change the access to the field. So for the past however many years he's been out there, we've had the village and the community has had access to the fields roughly from the beginning of May, the 1st of May through the beginning of October. And we are anticipating nor requesting no changes to those months.
Yeah, I think that it needs to be better defined here, especially because they're talking about special events, including concerts, arts and
Right.
craft shows, trade shows. I mean,
There's also language in there that the Parks and Recreation Director will schedule the activities.
I did see
And
that.
so, again, that's typical. What we would do is each year we have a list of tournaments, roughly 11 tournaments, 11 to 13. So what we do is we black those out at the beginning of each year. We don't permit anything else on those fields. Not only during the days that they're running, but very seldom do we even allow them even a day prior, because a lot of them, especially the youth tournaments, take setup days.
Right.
And so we even block out the
Cleanup
days
days.
before and sometimes the days after.
I'm just, the lodgers make a lot of money on that, so. There's another place on lease year that might need to be investigated too. It says
What
RSPS,
number is that?
it's 6.2, the last sentence in the first paragraph. RSPS shall have the exclusive right to determine cessation of operating during the season because of warm weather, and any such cessation shall not be a breach of this lease.
And your issue with that language is?
It's just, it's once again saying that they're determining when they're going to finish their season. Like, if we got a snow in May, they could potentially want to extend their season.
Your concern is him extending, not being
Okay.
short of the season.
Right, which that is, I think
So-
it's written with the idea that, that he wants to shut down early, that he
So that's a
can.
wrap too, if the.
Right above that, it does say the term season of operation as used shall mean 6-month period. But I don't see how those two things make sense with each other, like having summer stuff and then saying that the season is November 1st to Easter. The language doesn't make sense to me.
You're confusing me.
Well, just above that, it says, it defines season as you noted earlier. But once again, like in looking at the summer months that they're identifying, those two things don't work together.
Right.
I mean,
Are you saying, or maybe
And what
suggesting
my-
that there should be 2 seasons of operation?
Well,
or it
that's
goes
the-
from
A defined
June
season.
30th to July 1st? or
that's the
whatever.
impression I got from reading it, is that there was 2 seasons.
It appears in 2 pages previous to that you're correct, that it shows a summer months of operation, a winter months of operation, but yet the actual season of operation is defined as November 1 through July 31st, or July 1st, excuse me. So it doesn't address the summer months in the lease specifically,
Another
or November 1 to Easter.
concern I had, which would directly impact our fields, is, as they start to extend this up and they're doing I'm assuming, I'm not gonna make any assumptions.
Yeah.
They need to have a drainage plan. A good drainage
Right.
plan to keep the additional water they're pumping up from just coming down right onto the fields.
Will
They'll make the fields potentially, like, especially if they're parking in them, it could potentially be destroy the fields, so.
That'll be part of the development process. It's
Okay.
also in here that they have to comply with all local codes, and
Okay.
the village needs to
Grading and
review
draining.
their plans but it is a very valid point,
Um,
and we have thought about that.
Okay, all right. It,
I hate to back this up. Can I back it up for just a
Fine,
second
yeah.
though? Rodney, we're talking about allowing the Ruidoso Winter Park people to have access to 80 more acres in addition to what they already have. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And those 80 acres are roughly $812.50 an acre is what the lease agreement.
I can't recall what it was broken down
Somewhere
by,
close
but
to
it
that.
was a total of,
If you were saying 65,000.
yes,
$65,000 for the 80 acres, that would be $812.50 per acre. Okay, and then, I'm sorry, I had one more clarification question. So we would have no percentage of revenue from any of the winter operations.
that
So,
is correct.
okay, so now that would disclude the Sky Coaster or the Mountain Coaster, right? So that would still be considered part of that year-round percentage. So if there was any winter participants, that would come to us.
The way I understand it, because it is a year-round operation, it's greater than 6 months that the payment from the year-round.
Okay, so yeah, regardless if that's being
Yes.
used during the winter or the summer months, that's all, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we will not have any additional revenue coming from, well, obviously the tubing wasn't part of the agreement anyway. But you
Well-
would then have the beginner ski area and the snowboard park. So all of those would stay exclusive rights to Ruidoso Winter Park.
So we're not gaining an additional percentage, but we're gaining an additional flat rate payment.
Yeah,
Okay.
your gain is on the lease of the land,
Yeah.
additional 80 acres is where you're gonna draw your money.
Okay. Okay, that's all I just needed. to
And just for
clarify.
some historical information, so the current $100,000 payment that he pays, it is a flat rate fee. At one time, that was a percentage, but for financial and reporting reasons and budget planning,
Sure.
the village,
Easier to do, just
several
stack it
addendums
all.
back went to that flat rate payment. So that essentially, just as Mr. Johnson mentioned, that's the payment for those.
Sure. Okay, and so now with the expansion of the wintertime operations, obviously the amount of raw water being used to create the snow to cover that much more or 80 more acres of land. Are we obviously charging correctly?
It says
for
in
the
there,
amount
you
of
pays an additional $4.70 something cents per.
raw
the
cost of water?
That's
Okay,
correct.
And so I would
I agree.
actually,
40,000 gallons.
I just wanted to touch on that.
I would like to speak about that because that is one of the other important aspects of the lease for the village as a whole. And again, you mentioned recreation, but so currently, Ruidoso Snowplay has an agreement to pay $2 per 1,000 gallons for the raw water used for the winter operations. So the village has performed a raw water study that takes into account the cost of leasing, water, account of working on wells, the account of pumping those wells with electricity. And that study came back as the true cost of producing that raw water at $4.97 per thousand. And so Ruidoso Snowplay is in agreement to pay for the full cost of that water, which is a substantial
Yeah, it's a
Increase,
significant increase, significant. Sound like we were selling ourselves short. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And this is what, it's not leaving the aquifer, so.
Yeah, it's
It's
draining
coming-
right back into the aquifer and being used again, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was all the
The-
clarification that I needed.
And it's noted in here that a snow play area and ice skating ring liaison committee could be, like, the village has the option for that. Would that fall under our jurisdiction then? Or how would that work?
Not unless it was assigned by the mayor, because I believe you have specific duties in the, what do you call what is it called? Whenever this was put together, you have specific duties that are associated with the board.
Okay.
I believe it's making recommendations on budget and recreation.
And then the ice skating isn't listed in the winter months of operation.
So again, in one of the previous addendums,
Okay,
well, it goes back and forth. In, at the onset of the lease, it wasn't included. Then I believe in the first addendum, they included ice skating. But during the public hearing on the ordinance, Mr. Dorgan mentioned that there was a point where he did run ice skating, but it wasn't very, cost effective to run it because of the amount of energy consumption put into making the ice and keeping it in a quality that was safe for the
sure.
public.
Obviously, that's key.
If there were anything to change about that, the way you could, make ice, I'm sure he would be open to it, but the system that,
The Eagle Creek Intercommunity Water Supply Association, they've been integral in the development of this
no,
lease.
well, originally they were, but I think y'all have an old copy.
Okay,
So I made some changes and I thought I had sent them to you. I apologize. Again, back to that,
22.
where it mentions
D,
the Eagle Creek Water Association, it was disbanded in
oh,
nineties, I believe, in the village, the village, settled, had a settlement with them, paid them out, and so at one point it was owned by the association, but there's a change where the village is the
now owns
sole
it,
owner.
so, okay,
of
all
that.
right, all right.
And that was also the other reference to that addendum was associated with that water association. And so I did remove that, from the version that the governing body will be approving.
There's a note on the toilet facilities, adequate toilet facilities shall be provided at locations on the premises. Who provides those? I mean, because isn't there, isn't there like kind of joint ownership or something of the current bathroom concession area? How does,
The village owns the building. Mr. Dorgan
And so will
built
the-
it on, and
the vil-
did it to the village.
okay,
And so, through all of the events that I've been associated with
He
out
just
there,
takes
we
care of it.
haven't had to have additional facilities. I would say depending on who was, responsible for the expected increase, if we had to bring it in, that party would pay for it. So if it was the village, if we had a big event that we didn't think
Right.
would accommodate it, we would pay for it. If it was on him, then he would pay for it.
has he always provided a discount rate for locals?
It's always been in the lease.
Okay.
And honored it.
One other, and I'm assuming that this is gonna be 11.8 environmental concerns. It says RFPIS shall be especially mindful of environmental concerns and shall take special care and precaution in the selection. I mean, does the village have any say? That's their water right there. Is the village, included in that a prior approval of anything that he's gonna do there?
Yes, the village has a say.
It seems like it doesn't say that there. It's on 11.8.
Yes. I'll look into that.
Okay. You know, I think the only thing that we're really have any oversight over and is just, I do worry about the condition of the fields with the cars and also with the additional drainage. And ensuring that, because those fields already have some drainage issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're at the bottom of the hillside right there, right?
There's
So,
nowhere
I mean,
for the water
anytime-
to
yeah.
go.
Bottom of the hill.
I mean, yeah, they're at the bottom of the hill.
They're at the water level and just,
And would that be
they don't
included?
shed
maybe-
water, you know, they're flat by nature. That's, you've got to make sure that malt water is moving around them, not anywhere near through them, because they will be destroyed.
Well, and then that would obviously be part of the engineering and
something
the
in there.
evaluation part there to make sure that there's adequate grading and drainage to disperse the snow melt water to its appropriate discharge locations, I guess.
And the way that, amazingly enough, the way the chutes are there, they're maintained every year. They put straw back in them. Matter of fact, if you look in the areas where the current chutes are, there's no grass on the hillsides where the chutes are. Where in the chutes, they've replanted them over the years and they would put straw in there. And we've never really had issues with runoff. I'm sure water does run off of that slope, but you can look at them, there's not an erosion issue. There's
And
not
it's
like,
not so much erosion, it's just making sure, like, I mean,
Right.
if those fields get saturated and then people are parking on them, they're gonna get destroyed, so.
yes, and that is monitored through the winter whenever they park. So, like, you'll have snows that are whatever, real warm or, where it's that condition, then he wouldn't park there. And I also monitor that as the director as well, because I have the same concerns. Again, this has been going on for 3 years already. We've worked through that because I was anticipating, some problems with that.
You're making the call as to the fields are too wet to park on,
Yes.
and you're making that call.
And working with, Redoso Snowplane.
I think, yeah, in best hopes for him, it's gonna be pretty popular, which means that parking is gonna get utilized more than it ever has. Which, it's just gonna
Well, the
put
difference is
an
he would
additional
be on
strain
A
on it.
field now. Cause he's been using B field. It's been popular enough that he has the demand. So he's been parking on B for 3 years. He has paid for them to be rehabbed every year prior to the season. And we have not had any issues. That's not to say we never will, but it's the condition of it's his responsibility, I can't recall where it is, to put
Maintain.
BS back into the condition it was.
Yeah, it's within 30 days, they're supposed to have, which you can't really throw grass in 30 days, but you can get the seed out.
Yeah.
Do they ever utilize the lighting?
Yes,
And I noticed they pay all the utilities, so they pay for the lights, but those lights we pay maintenance on them, like I imagine we pay for new bulbs.
yes, we do.
And just,
So he doesn't use the
Stadium lighting.
complete system like we do. He'll use a few of the poles to light up the area. He pays for a contractor to come in and reposition a couple of the lights. But like where we have a whole field lit, he'll have one bank of lights lit. And so, since you brought up the utilities, so typically, under current operations, we split the utilities roughly about 6 months of the year. In this new agreement, because he would be needing those utilities, he's gonna pay for the utilities year round. So he's gonna pay for the telephone and the internet year round, and which he never paid the telephone and the internet anyways, because he had his own service. He's now gonna assume the operation of the phone and the internet, so he'll pay that year round. He'll pay for the treated water for the restrooms in that concession facility year round, which he had it. He's gonna pay for the electric for that building year round, which he had it. He's gonna pay for the cost of the dumpsters year round, which that again was a split. And then he pays for the full cost of the raw water during his season of operation. So the remaining utilities that will be responsible for the village will be the ball field lights during the summer months and the raw water to maintain those fields during the summer months. Otherwise, he's paying.
And so then he would
for the
assume the responsibility of the maintenance of the lights, replacements of the bulbs, ballasts, anything that may come along with using those.
rest. Well, I
things year
believe
round?
in there's some of the maintenance or some of that infrastructure is the responsibility of the village,
Sure.
which it's been pretty negligible.
At one point, I thought we were talking about replacing those lights.
We were, there's still not gonna be,
I
there's
just figured
change
they'd be
to
much
that.
more
It's
energy
still a need.
efficient, whatever we put in.
No, it's still a need, without a doubt.
Time to go LED, huh?
It seems like there would be a partnership with P and M to help alleviate some costs.
It's in Otero,
Oh, it is in Otero.
and they have different rebate programs.
I think from what we have oversight over, it sounds like a good deal. The village, when at termination of the lease, it says, everything is surrendered.
Permanent, all the permanent
Permanent, yeah.
infrastructure improvements.
And obviously, all of those things would be operational at the point of turnover. That would be the
I think
case.
there's,
Like you
there's
couldn't let
something
the
written in
maintenance.
there that says he has to, yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't just like let the maintenance go all
Right.
the way and then turn it over and let that responsibility be assumed by us.
Which is not,
Yeah.
it's not really our deal, but.
So as another, or I would say, as a result of the comments and the participation and the concerns from that ordinance, I will also be presenting a resolution to the governing body during the upcoming November council meeting that recommends that the village commit to pursuing the acquisition of additional property and the construction of additional fields.
I saw that note somewhere. I was wondering what,
I think that was
Now-
the body of the email I sent.
okay, that's what I thought. I was gonna ask about that. Can you share with us some of you said that there was a considerable amount of comment. Is there a list, is there some notes of those comments that we can?
There was quite a few, I can't even recall how many, but the main concern was losing a field. Because initially, my expectation was that we were gonna lose a field to parking. And when that was brought up, I actually revisited that issue with Mr. Dorgan, and he said that language was put in there by the village, not by him. And so he clarified that I don't need that field permanently. I need the field to help out with the winter operations with those expansions. But he never had requested for those fields to be removed from inventory. And so, that's a change from the original proposal, is we're not removing any one of those fields from the inventory or from use by the community for local leagues or for tournaments.
Okay.
I do think clarification of the season needs to
Still
be
be
done,
in there.
and even potentially identifying the summer season as restricted access to the A field or limited access. I don't know. That would, because the way I currently read it doesn't.
I think that's wise.
I just don't
Take
see how
care of that.
using that field in the springtime, how you could not destroy the grass. In the hard winter months when that ground's frozen solid, it's fine to park on there as long as it's, you're not burning out on it.
It's-
But come springtime, when all that saturation rate and the snow melt starts happening, it gets real
So
wet real quick.
So, and briefly explain our winters the last several years.
Yeah.
Very dry.
Very dry. No, I
Okay, so
agree.
the-
I
The
agree.
fields, they really don't capture that snow runoff like they capture the rain runoff.
Okay.
It's a whole different story. Typically, the snow runoff that he operates, it runs out the end of between B and C off the end of the slope.
Right.
And there's really not water running out onto the fields.
True.
C field will get water because they actually make snow and push it onto the field.
Right.
But A and B are relative, if you have a dry winter, it's a dry field. It's
Yeah.
not getting the runoff like that's running off the slopes.
And most of their days of operation too, if it's snowy, they're parking on the field and it's fine.
Well, with the expansion, there's gonna be, I mean, what is this isn't real, well, I guess it does fall under us a little bit. The main parking area. How much maintenance do we end up doing any maintenance in that in the winter as far as?
We do very minimal, maintenance out there during the season of operation in the winter.
I'm just thinking if they start changing the way that mountain looks, it's gonna change the way water comes down one way or another, and I just think they need to make sure that drainage
Right.
isn't crossing the parking lot in a way that's gonna end up costing us money to maintain, and, it's a pretty rough parking lot already, and
The village
mean,
does
that's-
so with the parking lot,
yeah.
we perform very little, if any, on an annual basis of grading the parking lot. As far as winter maintenance, if we have maybe an issue with the restrooms, then that's about really what we deal with. is
Well, it's in his
restroom
best interest to keep
facilities.
it, he puts all that carpet down, which is crazy, but.
Yeah, and then picks it back up and does it
Yeah,
again.
I
And I think they do all their own snow plowing and everything like that, as far as like the
Yeah,
parking lot grading and drainage.
mean, I know they're just, at some point, it seems like that parking lot's gonna end up having to get paved anyways. I don't know.
Probably not be a bad idea in the future.
You guys got anything else?
I don't,
I don't think I do either.
So if I may, Trevor, I was hoping that y'all could provide a recommendation to the governing body regarding the agreement.
Yeah, you guys wanna somebody wanna make a motion?
do you want?
I think it should be contingent upon ensuring that proper drainage is included in the master plan of the, I don't know, that's probably not our call, but I think we should maybe note that we have some concerns. I have some concerns in regards to drainage and ensuring that the integrity of the fields are maintained with.
And I think that you should include that in your recommendation.
So, do we need a motion?
Oh, in the seasons, like the season,
The definition of the seasons, or
Yeah.
separate the two, where you clearly define a winter months of operation and a summer months of operation
with a difference in field use.
during the summer months versus the winter months. And maybe that needs to be more clearly defined.
So you would want to define a more specific definition on seasons and also further review of the grading and drainage or recommendations for improved grading and drainage to prevent damage to the field. And then we had one other,
Ensuring that the development plan includes.
Development plan.
Drainage. Stormwater. Because the rains will, when they do come, if they're clearing more of that hill, they're gonna come down faster. And
well, hopefully they would berm and swell it and do it like you're supposed to and divert the
there a
water
third?
correctly.
I'm sorry. So define the two seasons, adequate language, for drainage.
Integrated fields.
Didn't you have one
integrated
other
fields.
verbiage correction that you were concerned about?
There was, the only other thing that was the environmental note that they would use special care or something, and I don't know, but that's not our jurisdiction really, that's.
Yeah, that's. So will we make a motion to approve the lease agreement for the Ruidoso Snow Play and Ice Skating Incorporated with special attention paid to defining the seasons correctly in verbiage, and then also
Wait,
I'm gonna second whatever he finishes here.
Okay.
okay, motion to approve lease agreement for the snowplay with special attention paid to,
Definition of
Definition
the
of
seasons of
seasons.
operation,
mhm,
clear definition of seasons of operation,
mhm.
or a
Okay.
clear distinction of the two.
Clear distinction of the two, especially in regards to the
With
parking.
reduced access to fields for parking during the summer season?
Correct, with no access to the fields for parking during the summer
Well-
season, correct?
He can't park on them anyway without the village's approval, period.
Okay.
I mean, that language is already there, so I think if you define the seasons of operation, the rest of the language will clean it up.
And then we do want to make a further recommendation for more specific grading and drainage, or proper grading and drainage to prevent damage to the pre-existing fields. That sounds pretty close to correct.
Pretty good.
Sure.
Listen, you get all that?
no, okay.
Okay,
Oh, wait, I think I only have two. Motion to approve lease agreement for Ruidoso Snowplay with special attention paid to the clear definition of seasons of operation, especially regarding parking, proper drainage to prevent further damage to fields.
or to prevent damage to fields, just because
Prevent
the
damage.
fields aren't technically being damaged, so.
And what was the third one?
We don't have a third one because we
So
don't
it's just
have,
those two right there?
yeah, because we don't have any
Okay,
say so about the environmental concern, correct?
okay.
Okay.
So Corey seconding that?
Yes, ma'am.
Aye. There's only one more.
Aye. Thanks for the enthusiasm.
Appreciate your all's time.
Yes, sir.
So, and under the director's report, for recreation, the recreation that we provided during the, COVID period has been very, very limited. We have, provided, opportunities, three different archery shoots, a disc golf, tournament, as well as recently some, the haunted Halloween drive-through and the haunted Halloween drive-in movies. We did some other like virtual opportunities for youth activities with skills improvements and challenges. We haven't had much participation in those. And, but we did have a really good turnout for the Halloween events.
I think we had two disc golf things. We had the full moon one and then we
In
had
the
the one.
glow?
Oh, no, that was all the same one.
Yeah, we just had the
Okay.
one disc golf
Sorry.
tournament, which yielded 44 participants the day of out of 50 possible registrations, so that's good.
I was thinking there was two different ones, I'm sorry.
Archery shoot had 40 participants also, which is awesome. And we had 120 registered vehicles for the haunted drive-through.
So what we have done with all of
Right.
these events is we've utilized the reservation or recreation software. And we have created reservations for all of these. And so as you mentioned, I believe like in the disc golf, out of 55 possible reservations, there were 44 that were filled up. And the archery events, out of 55 possible time slots, there were also, it's been averaging in the 40s.
I feel like
For
that's
those
great
as well.
participation though.
It is really good.
Yeah.
I believe that we would have had higher numbers, but the way that we were running the archery is that you had to register as a group. So if there was, and we had a minimum of 2 registrations per group. So if there were multiple reservations that only had 2, well, there was no way to possibly fill the other 3 slots because you had to be associated with that group to shoot with them.
Okay,
So we were hoping to attract like friends, a group of 5, or a family, a group of 5. But those are really, really good numbers for those events.
tell me about these mountain bike rentals.
So we have increased our fleet of mountain bike rentals.
Where do you rent those out here?
We rent them out of our office.
Okay,
And so we have information on the website, and then there's other businesses in town who actually send them to us.
I'm gonna say we need to pump that way
We've
more.
had pretty steady bike rentals through the summer. Has fell off in the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
But we did pretty good numbers. We elected this year not to use those rentals at the lake through the concession operation. What we witnessed was a lot of damage because a lot of first-time users who not really knowing what they're doing, and we're not having the first hands-on to actually work with them, and they're probably renting them in less than ideal conditions. You have a lot of bike damage in mud.
Sure.
Gets on the chain, throws the chain off, and so Melissa's our head of our bike rental fleet. She does
You doing the maintenance too, Melissa?
No, I'm not in charge of maintenance.
We contract out the maintenance, but we've
Okay.
had very little this summer, actually.
Okay.
Do we have signs up at some of the trail entrance that's about the bike rental?
No, we don't. We don't really promote it. We, with signage at the lake, but where we promote it is on just our website and through Facebook.
I feel like we need to let more people know that we as Parks and
Well,
Recreation have that resource available.
So we originally started bike rentals because there was a window where no one was offering it.
For sure.
And
That's what I was just gonna say. I think now you have current retailers in the
Right.
village that are doing that same thing, and the last thing we wanna do is compete with your
Right.
constituents.
and
So
I
that's what
agree
we're
with that.
trying
I
not to do is.
think you're right on keeping it kind of hush.
But as far as I know, Shane over there at Board House, he's the only one that rents mountain bikes right now, and those are the e-bikes.
Right.
So there's, the only bikes that are for rent are electric
You
bicycles.
guys run here.
Bye, Tim,
Thank
thank you,
Thank
see
you.
ya.
So I
And there's-
didn't realize
The
he was
Lance
only
Road, those
doing
guys
e-bikes,
still do
but-
any of that?
No, so Wallace doesn't do any bike rentals. He only takes out tours and like guides people. So the guys at Backcountry aren't doing that. Shane only has the e-bike, so
Really?
really.
Yeah.
I think some of those that are out front every day, I think some of those are rentals too, those standard orange and white.
Maybe,
ones are
and maybe
in front.
that's something that we should talk, I know I could
Yeah.
personally go talk to Shane. I see him on a regular basis and just pick his brain on what that
But
is. But
again, we-
I agree, you don't want to step on the toes
I
of your
don't think you wanna battle
constituents.
your constituents.
No, I agree.
We were not trying to compete with anybody. Again, we originally started it because no one
Because
was
there
doing
wasn't
it.
an
Yeah,
option.
sure. But also to handle the volume of people wanting to do that. If Shane only has 20 bikes and there's 200 people wanting to rent a bike that day.
What
Needs a
size
barn.
fleet now?
Yeah.
Is it 9?
No, it's one.
Is it 4, 8,
We have around
9,
12. I think.
10, 11? I think we have 11.
See, and I think Shane probably
Two
only
are
has
children and
20
two
at
are
the
youth,
most.
And then the rest are adults.
But we
Okay.
offer
That's cool.
carriers and tailgate protectors
Helmets.
and a bike, a wagon.
Well, I'm glad you,
Oh, yes.
I'm glad to know that as a local now. So
We
if I
just
want to
got
go rent a
tow
bike.
barn For kids.
Nice.
So
That's
as y'all
cool.
can imagine, if we go back 8 to 9 months, the lake was crazy this summer. The implementation of that reservation process was a lifesaver.
Total key.
It worked out really well. I don't have our final numbers yet, but between the bike rentals, the grindstone concessions, and the parking, we generated around $250,000
Woo, woo.
of revenue. And including boat permits. We have a few projects, we completed a few projects that were funded over the year. We put in a couple of sunshades at the Kids Connection Playground. We did some, I need to call it something. We did some retaining walls at the concession stand, and we have a couple other retaining walls that need to be completed.
What is the hauling and digging out beach?
So we are also, the village is constructing a beach that's directly south of the concession building. We paid for an engineer to plan out the beach that includes excavation and then putting back a layer of stone and fabric and sand.
So you
in
guys
that
are actually
area.
creating like a usable beach area, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's actually currently underway. The village has performed the majority of the excavation. There's some minor excavation left. We'll be working with the engineer in the next couple of weeks for a site visit to come plan out putting the materials back.
I was up there recently and it's such a great usable area that they've captured up there. I think it's going to be great. And you guys are going to sell beach huts or tents or
Those are things
something
that I
like
think that
throughout
would
the
be-
season?
That would be a hit.
Yeah. I mean, I know I would personally rent a cabana at said mountain lake if that was something to do for the day.
I
Yeah.
think those additions that we added are gonna be huge on a normal year.
But that's not just going to be like public access. Like you will have to pay to use the beach area, correct? Or have a
Not
certain wristband
necessarily.
or something?
Not necessarily. I don't, if things go back or if and when they go back and we're operating a Whibbit, we expect a lot of customers from the Whibbit to be using that throughout the summer. But then,
Well, that's,
the Whibbit is only, had been run from Memorial Day to Labor Day roughly. So, outside of those months, it'll be just a general access.
Sure.
We have a lot of people that still want to fish in that area, so.
are we doing something up with the campground?
So we are looking for some recommendations out of the master plan for the campground. My personal opinion is that because of the influx of visitors we saw this year and the way we altered the parking in that area, I think it's a much better use of that campground to accommodate the parking than it is to run a campground. So the campground is really, really limited. It's only 22 tent sites and 6 RV spaces.
And it's primitive camping only
And it's
anyway.
primitive camping only, no campfires. Where for parking, we parked 150 cars in that area. And the benefit of that is we took all of the overflow parking out of Grindstone off of Resort Drive. And it really made it cleaner operations, especially when it came to inconveniencing the neighbors. So I think it's a better use, in my opinion, to use it as parking. Because prior to that, we were parking, trying to keep people constantly from parking in neighborhoods, parking on roads. So I think a
Parking on the
combination
disc golf course.
of extending the use of requiring reservations and limiting the vehicles and trying to capture all of those vehicles in that area is much better. There's a possibility also through the master plan, I would like them to evaluate of some possible off-site selling of tickets and maybe off-site dropping people off at the lake.
Ooh, our valet would be a great situation
Something
for
like
up
a
there.
public transportation option or.
What about a kiosk downtown where you could buy your
Yes,
tickets on the main street?
yes, we would love that.
Be a great idea.
Okay, so retrofitting the campground and or revamping the campground to make it solely parking, taking your 150 cars or 150 parkable cars that you can get up there now. If we were to remove the tent sites and RV sites, and I've driven up there a couple of times, so obviously you're not using the facility to its maximum capacity of parking. So you do a small amount of reservation or renovation to that area so you could fit 200 cars?
So I actually, again, this is just my opinion.
Sure.
I want the planner to do some more, have some more thought on that. But so we did invest probably $250,000 in the campground. you know, if you change the, you know, the dynamics and the use of it, what I would like also to consider is changing each of those tent sites to a
Picnic.
picnic site. So you just simply put a picnic table in it, and now you've created 22 picnic sites.
I like
And
that
then
idea.
And then the 6 RV spaces is you could create a day use family area, put a couple of picnic tables in that area.
And then you have quick walking access down to the lake. You have room to park your car and your vehicle up there with all your shenanigans.
So you're not
Sounds
really
great.
having to change anything or do any additional construction other than the addition of the picnic table.
And some trash cans. Fair enough. So I didn't mean to hijack your question there.
No, that's, we got a lot of information out of that. We were able to help some of the restaurants with direction of tents and stuff. That's
So,
awesome.
through, just on behalf of the governing body, they funded the purchase of, 22 tents, I believe, and I may be mistaken, maybe only like 19. We had
I
a
think
few
we
on
had a
there.
couple already. Right?
But the governing body elected to purchase those tents to support local businesses. In the long run, the village ended up applying for a CARES Act grant from the state, and we recouped that investment, but the governing body did that on behalf of the citizens and the businesses.
Were they gifted to the restaurants?
No, how do you say, we had a rental agreement with them, but it was a no-cost rental. They just put up a security deposit.
Did we get ours taken down before the snow?
I was
No.
gonna say, how
We
many,
had-
I was gonna say,
how many
of
tents
ours
got
were
lost?
In the snow that are
I don't
collapsed?
have the final numbers, but we had some damage to some of the tents. There was a few of the tops that got ripped, and there were a few of the frames that got busted.
Dude, the one at Cornerstone got just
And
mutilated.
that was not ours.
Oh, thank goodness.
Same with Log Cabin,
Yeah.
Dog cabin,
and Anaheim Jacks.
The Anaheim Jack was ours.
Yeah, it was buckled.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
But,
That's part
you
of
know, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know, now, you know, I tell you, our staff has been extremely busy this whole time. There wasn't a time that, you know, you think like, we basically
Downtime.
dropped all recreation.
Yeah.
But our
help.
staff was reassigned to parking. There were times when we were running 14 people on weekends managing parking at Grindstone Lake alone. And so.
You guys don't even have enough guys for
We
that.
didn't have recreation, we didn't have tournaments, but we ended up working more overtime and weekends than we would have in a normal year. The convention center staff were reassigned to the Parks Department, and so they worked for us as custodians,
Or still working.
and are still working for us as custodians.
Wow.
And so again, we've been extremely busy. You know, there's some things like, and as you all know, the outdoor recreation was, I mean, went crazy. So, well, that's us, that's parks, restrooms, lakes. And we had to increase our maintenance to them to almost 7 days a week at times.
Dude, so you're burning the guys out. So with all this new captured revenue and all these plans, are you gonna expand Parks and Rec and maybe hire some more positions and
So,
for the
I
influx
think we better
of
see what happens
workers?
with lodgers tax.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna
Yeah.
ask.
Seems like in
How is
February,
lodgers tax?
We
gonna
asked
affect-
for an awful lot of money. I think we better see what happens with lodgers tax.
so interestingly enough, from what I understand, that lodgers tax really hasn't taken a dip.
I don't see how not.
Yeah.
I really don't see how.
Man,
not.
I think we're like year round and it town is bumping. Like
But,
even on weekdays.
You know, I think with the change in the way things happen and we seen, and I think Melissa would agree with me, because our phone rang off the hook, that information here on the October calls as well, but
The October calls are nothing. We were getting 250 phone calls a day.
and it was first time
Visitors.
visitors to the outdoors. They had never been camping, they
Jeez.
had never been fishing, they had never been hiking. And I think what we're gonna see is our numbers for outdoor recreation stay that way, because they were introduced to it, and they're gonna keep
That's a good point.
visiting. I really do expect that. So the year before, we saw a lot of first-time visitors to Grindstone Lake. Again, numbers from El Paso, people that hadn't been. So we saw an increase because they went back and they shared with them, what was at the lake. But we still even saw so many first-time visitors again this year, still going to the lake, swimming.
Mhm.
It was just incredible. I don't know how many people there are in El Paso, but.
I can't believe that there's anyone that hasn't come
Yes.
here, or that we haven't personally spoken to on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, they're
There's
still
still
running
people
now.
that haven't been here and don't know about it.
It was
It's
incredible.
crazy, yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I've been here since I was 11 and I've never seen town this consistent.
Consistent.
Obviously, like, Labor Day, Memorial Day, those are still like
Right,
the
but it's-
bumping days, right?
Yeah.
But just to see
yeah, it's
100
like
people
on a
walking through
Tuesday,
Midtown on
there's
a
still
Tuesday,
So,
like usually it's like, okay, great guys, thanks for like,
Go get my groceries.
trashing our town. Yeah, like, we're gonna take a month off and chill and go enjoy ourselves. But I don't think that lull has come this season at
so
all.
what, we started the reservation system for 300 vehicles at Grindstone roughly about June 15th.
Mhm.
And it did not stop. I thought it would stop. Okay, come Labor Day, our numbers were dropped.
Typically, that's what
Did
happens.
not. We sold out 300 reservations at Grindstone all the way up until about 3-4 weeks ago.
Wow.
I mean, it kept going into the month of October, I mean, not 3-4 weeks ago, and
It
it
wasn't
just
even that long,
recently
yeah.
dropped off. It just,
How much flack are you
2
guys
weeks.
getting right now for the locals only at the lake situation?
what do you mean? Oh,
Getting any grief from the locals about the locals only, or even out of town?
we get grief from the Roswell locals, the
Yeah.
Alamogordo
Yeah,
locals, the
yeah.
Las Cruces locals.
Yeah.
Those are the people who feel they own this place as well. And it's
Yeah.
weird. It's weird what people think defines locals. I mean, because when we first started with the Whibbit, you had Ruidoso Downs people,
Sure.
Capitan, Alto. Well, we're locals. Well, I mean, so we expanded that. Now you're hearing, well, I'm from Roswell, I'm a local.
I'm
I'm from
from
Alamo, I'm from Cruces, I'm a local. So it's funny how, people see it. We caught a little bit of grief from that, but it wasn't too
not
bad
bad.
today.
Not manageable.
It hasn't been terrible.
For
I
the
think,
most part, you
if it
explain
was-
it,
yeah,
people
yeah.
understand.
If it was busy, if this was August and that was in place,
Yeah, I
we
think
would
it
get a
gets
lot
some
more grief.
slack.
I
I
think
agree.
it's slowed down enough that you don't
Cool.
have a ton of people.
Agree.
There's a couple.
Do we want to try to set a date for a meeting? Or do we want to just go ahead and,
So if I could, just mention a couple things and then we can talk about a meeting.
Yeah.
So, that January meeting is definitely an important meeting.
right,
Essentially, we went through last year, recommended about $1 million worth of projects, and they really didn't go anywhere. We could either revisit that list and, put that together again. Typically, they ask for our list of projects like late February, beginning of March. If you don't feel like having one meeting in January is adequate, we could review, have a special meeting to review that list again. They did fund a couple of capital purchases for us in this last meeting. It was just, we are very fortunate that we got 2 trucks and a trailer. They are funding the beach through, it will be completed.
Okay.
But really, the list of projects, really nothing was funded out of it.
Just my opinion, but I think it would be a good idea to revisit that list
absolutely.
Yeah.
with consideration to how life has changed. I think we might, as a group, find more priority on certain things than we did a year ago when none of this was going on.
For sure.
I think it's a great idea to go back and revisit that and maybe resubmit with amendments or whatever we need to do.
Yeah. Or
I think
other
it's a great
special.
idea.
I'm with it. I'm down for an
So
extra
again,
meeting.
if you all don't feel, or what I could do is in the meantime, I could update that list. If take a few things off of it, or just update you if they've been completed or the status of them.
Yeah, that would be
I can
good.
resend that list. If you all feel like you need a meeting prior to January, we could schedule that. And if not, we can just have that, the important item on the agenda in January.
I think it's
But
a
I'll
good
send
idea.
out that
At least
list.
reevaluate it, relook at it and if something's been started or is close to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just take a look at it. I think it's a good idea.
I agree.
We might, as a group, collectively reevaluate some priorities.
Well, like you
that'll
said,
take a
life
full
is-
meeting, and I don't know how long the Grindstone Lake, that shouldn't take, I guess, too long, but if we need to make a recommendation on that, the master plan, what is, I'm not really sure what our role is on that.
So the master plan, I think it would be helpful for the governing body at the end when it's completed. Well, it's important that you participate in
That'd be
it, but at the
February.
end, I would hope that y'all, would recommend approval of it to the governing body. They proceed with possibly some projects come out of it. But again, I'm anticipating that will be completed till about February.
And Rodney is over the convention center again now. I don't know if that is in your.
Oh, I didn't know.
It was in that October report. It didn't really state that, but.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't retire.
Yeah.
I know, I'm glad. Somebody told me in the summer, I was like, we're gonna have a meeting.
I was pretty worried, dude, not gonna lie. I was like,
You
well,
were not the only one.
yeah, I'm sure. Well, we're glad you didn't go, Rodney.
We are glad.
Yeah, bro.
Yes, sir.
And if you need someone scary for your next event, this is Rodney in the picture holding.
T-Bone said you
That
definitely
orange-
made some kids
That
cry,
orange
man.
jumper.
I'm out.
Somebody have a motion, make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I second.
Aye,
Aye.
roll call vote.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you guys and apologize about meeting, but I think we're the first board to have a meeting.
It went well.
Well, other than the planning commission and the council. I think Keep It Also Beautiful is gonna pick up the meeting next.
Our next meeting we should.
Are we off?
No.
Oh, no, not yet.
No, I'm still here, but I'm gonna say bye.
Bye, Jazz.
Good to see y'all virtually.
Man, you've been kayaking this whole time. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I have.
I
Yeah.
know. Later.
Bye.
Bye.
You're on camera right now.
Yeah, don't do anything. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Let us know what we can do.
I'm gonna sell some, T signs